force you into a situation where you stop looking at one another and start looking on the outside. In this particular incident, I would say yes, we are one. I was on the ground on Sunday. I saw hundreds and thousands of people show up to donate blood to people they do not know. They were not involved. They did not have any loved ones who were involved in this incident, but they did show up. But also to realize that how it picked up on social media is about 3 weeks before the Westgate incident happened. There was a movement running, We Are One, with different Kenyan faces, with just the flag like a mask across the face. And it was running in print, but it has also been running online. Started by a creative on their own who's just been looking at this whole issue over the past year and saying, how do we start getting people to see that we are Kenyan? How do we start identifying not as this tribe, that tribe, or this community, but start saying that we are Kenyan? And so he started this campaign where you send him your photo, he puts a mask on it, and it says we are one. So it's one Kenya, one vibe, we are one.
And it's good that you bring that out, because some people thought that we are one began.
Absolutely. And I actually, at some point I was tweeting and I said, not enough credit has been given, and I'm going to name it, not enough credit has been given to Arnold Lakita of Ogilvy, Kenya, who is the one who started the We Are One concept, which is actually now running on print. So it started as an idea, it's become a movement, and it's going. So when this happened, it was easy to pick on something that people have seen and have heard and run with it. But it then got actually manifested in the way people responded to this tragedy, in the way people, and considering that there's a lot of people who still don't have closure, that yesterday there were still people giving blood, that there were still people giving in donations, that there's still people raising money, and we're still raising money for the Red Cross. So I think in that aspect, yes, we are one.
MP.
Yes, Sophia, thank you. Let me first of all maybe take the opportunity to condole the Kenyans who unfortunately, and many other people who lost their lives. Are we one? I think the true spirit of Kenyanism was demonstrated in its best in this very unfortunate situation. It was really admirable to see how Kenyans stand up to help each other, to support each other, to stand in for each other. We saw people bringing food to the soldiers who are, who are fighting the attackers on that particular day. But I think the whole spirit was captured by one foreign journalist who actually said that in her entire career of 30 years, she has never seen a citizen coming out to bring her hot coffee every other hour, just to encourage her to keep on doing the good work of informing people. This was truly a very amazing spirit. And I must say, in our neighborhoods as well, in every places that we lived in, particularly in the neighborhood that I live, I have this old mama who came round to every household around the neighborhood, knocking on the door and saying, are you okay? Are you well? Is everybody okay? Across the country, we saw people coming out, people gathering together in prayers, praying for the country. We did that in my constituency on Monday. People coming together to say, how can we help? Sending M-Pesa, doing the blood donations, and speaking out with the spirit of saying we are one, wearing the national flag as clothes, and all this. I must say that the spirit of true Kenyanism, a very admirable spirit, was indeed demonstrated in this particular time.
Sakaja.
First, I'd like to associate myself with the sentiments of my colleague in passing condolences to those who have lost loved ones and wishing a quick recovery to those in hospital. Indeed, these are difficult times. People have, what we've gone through as a country, I don't think anybody expected it. And the amazing thing is that, as has been the case in many places in the world, sometimes adversity brings out unity. Adversity brings out togetherness. When you ask whether we are one, I'd like to say that we have always been one, but we have let other things cloud that unity that is inherent in us. No one formed a committee to tell Kenyans to go donate blood. Nobody told that woman to go and start cooking tea. The people who are trying to get into danger to rescue others. Yesterday we saw Haji, who actually went to got his brother and stayed in there getting other people out. No one told him to do it. Deep down inherently, we have always been one. That is why we say that we need to create an identity that is bigger than what we focus on every day. We focus on where you're from, which tribe you are. So indeed, I think we are one. I spent the whole of Sunday at Kencom, and I was overwhelmed by this Kenyan spirit. And I was saying that in as much as they may hurt our bodies, they can never destroy the Kenyan spirit, because the philosophy of terrorism is really to instill fear. It is to instill, to divide people. It is driven by propaganda, and despite what they did, Kenyans have come together. And I think the question for us is, how then do we keep that unity manifest? How do we keep it going? Because really no one cared who received. I mean, you're not asking who will get this blood that I'm donating. I think in the past 3 days, more blood than has been collected in months before was collected, and we didn't care. And somebody said on Twitter that they have only made us stronger because now we have our blood flowing through each other's veins.
Irrespective of
that. So I think it's important for us, even as we ask the hard questions, to see how can we keep up this Kenyan spirit, because we have always been one. How do we push aside those things that have tried and that have been used to divide us as a Kenyan people?
And you have preempted my next question, because as we've just been talking, we saw that it was very clear, a very well painted picture. We came together irrespective of our divergent views, our differences, cultural, religious. But how do we keep that beyond this tragedy? I'll start with you, sir.
Yes, very good question. How do we keep that unity beyond this tragedy? I think what we need to realize is that Kenya is ours for all of us, and we will remain, whether we like it or not, we will remain as one. This is where we belong. I think what we need to do is continue to encourage Kenyans to see themselves first as brothers and sisters, and then thereafter as belonging to different, be it political or ethnic, because the ethnic diversity itself is a beauty. The flower has many colors, and that's what Kenya is. We belong to different ethnic groups, but that's what makes us. That's what makes all of us. I think what needs to be done is right from the basic, from the childhood. How do we instill the spirit of Kenyanism in our children? How do we bring that feeling that, because when we were in school and we were young, we never knew what we were or what different ethnicity we were all about. I think the whole idea that I would like to say is to say that we need to nurture this spirit of Kenyanism from childhood, ensuring that whether deliberately through even our own curriculums, and ensuring that our children are exposed to issues of nationalism, love, just like the Americans. An American stands up, says, I'm an American. They are very proud of it, whether it is a child or a 75-year-old their spirit is one and the same. That's the kind of thing that we need to do. And the thing that every Kenyan needs to know is that a good Kenya is good for all of us. A united Kenya is good for all of us. A Kenya that truly believes in the spirit of oneness, the spirit of brotherliness, just like we naturally demonstrated in this unfortunate incident when it happened. We need to see that, because everyone in Kenya is now talking about this and very happy about what the spirit that has been demonstrated. It appears that every Kenyan is happy about this, and what we want to say is that the more we fall together and hold each other's hands, political views and all these are things that will continue to be there.
Right.
But the core is that we must ensure that our country remains one, we remain one as Kenyans, and that is what is good for all of us.
And you talked about nurturing that from the very early stagehood and our curriculum education coming into question. Lorna, I think the biggest thing is we'll always have different views. We'll not always all of us be on the same side or agree on all issues. But despite these divergent views at one time or the other, how do we tolerate that and keep in mind that we are Kenya? That's what transcends everything else. How do we now deal, especially with the Kenyans? What about children? What about the adults? Because I think that's where it really gets murky.
I think one of the things that, and Sakaja said this, he said that in times of tragedy, people seem to come together. My thing is, what was dividing us before? That's a question we need to answer. Because then once you answer that question, you then realize what you need to do to keep the oneness going. And we saw a lot of things happen without the traditional leaders, and I'm going to say this because the politicians here, and to be sincere, the people who divide us are politics. Our politics is what divides us, because at no time is Kenya more divided than during a political period. And we have talked about this over and over and over again, and for me, I'm like, it's a big elephant that's always there. You can no longer avoid it, because think about it. At this point, apart from the president, and he spoke as a president, not as a political leader or this, he spoke as a president. He presented himself. The leaders came there as leaders. He united all the leaders, and we, for the first time since election, where no kind word has been said, where there's been back and forth, where there's been insults being hurled, which is what we as the Kenyan people have been absorbing, they stood up and they stood together in unity. Meaning for me that when push comes to shove, we are Kenyan. We are one. We can stand there. But this has not been seen. So are we going to wait for tragic moments only for us to say kind words to each other? Are we going to wait for tragic moments only for us to stop playing politics with each other's lives? Because the truth of the matter is, when you have those angry, divisive words, when you start calling this against these people, when you play divisive politics in the face of a country, you are creating divisions that end up running really deep with people who unfortunately are pawns in your chess game, because it really is about power, and it's a power play. So when you ask me what's going to keep the adults united, is that we managed to raise money without a single politician standing up to say anything. We managed to raise blood. There was no single political core. There was a leadership core, and this is a difference, but there was no single political core. That people stood up, lined up, volunteers. I don't think enough credit has been given to the additional volunteers, with the exception of the Kenya Red Cross has done this, and one or two people who also have been spotlighted in the media. But I know about 100 kids who have been on the ground since Saturday, helping out. These are young people, the same youth we say, you know, how manipulated and this, not asked for a penny. They have been on the ground helping Kenya Red Cross mobilize and get those resources. And for me, when you look at that, I'm like, wait a minute, let's ask ourselves the critical questions. Where was our leadership? What did they do? You know, what was their show of we are one? What was their show of coming together and saying this? And for me, when you look at those things, you begin to realize, and I want to then challenge also the media to continue this conversation that says, people, this is what it's about. We cannot continue playing into the hands of people whose agenda is very clear. And it's a political agenda. And we have to begin to understand the difference between political agendas and leadership in general.
And that discussion comes, it's good we have both of you politicians here with us in studio, because it's a huge part that divisive politics plays in keeping us divided. Because yes, we are one. You talked about have we, and we'll get into that, what has divided us in the first place. But it's sometimes some of these politics we see our leaders play, that on every particular issue, the different scripts being read, no matter what. So on this particular one, yes, we saw the leaders coming together, roundtable discussions, but next week again, we'll see them go back to what we're used to. So what is the role of leadership here, Sakaja?
Thanks. First, let me say this. Unity is not uniformity. We can differ politically on issues, but that does not mean we're divided as a country. And we need to embrace that mature style of politics. For example, Honorable Aden is my very good friend, but he's from the odium side. But on certain things, we can close ranks, and we agree, actually, this is the way to go. And you will never hear me hurling an insult at him.
But that rarely happens, Sakaja. It does not happen.
It's exception.
It does, but let me tell you this. Kenyans want to be united. Kenyans have showed us the way. None of us called them to, you know, as I said earlier, to come and donate that. In fact, I was telling somebody at Kencom that day that actually, you know what, politicians don't know anything about this thing, about unity. Let me give you a fairly related example. In 2002, when mobile phones were coming and email, whatnot, no one told Kenya Post and Telecommunications to close down. It was overtaken by events. And I think this is one of those situations where the Kenyan people must overtake the politicians and demonstrate unity, such that the politicians realize that the brand of divisive politics does not sell anymore. It is obsolete. No one told people to stop using typewriters. The computers came. And I think this unity is something that actually must be portrayed, first of all, by the media, Because you actually have a big role as the media. How many Kenyans attend political rallies? Very, very few. How do we tell that politicians are dividing us? It is what we see on the news. It is what is covered. Now, if a politician realizes that if I take this angle of politics, if I talk like this in parliament, if I talk like this in my rallies, I will not be covered, they will stop. So I'm not saying that the media is the one that will correct the politicians, but I think it's time for censorship. Let us not air things that divide Kenyans, because some politicians are inherently divisive. Some politicians will take any opportunity to insult, but there are also other politicians who speak a lot of sense, who speak issues, but it is not newsworthy. So I think there is a responsibility on each and every one of us. Secondly, I think we will remain one. And this again is a call on leadership. When every Kenyan in every part of this country feels as Kenyan as, the next Kenyan. We've had blasts in Wajir, and I'd also like just to pass my condolences to the one person who's died. Is there the same attention focused there? One person has died, 3 are injured. We need to see it on the media. We need to see Kenyans also asking for answers on what has happened there. In the past 1 year, I think more than 100 people have died. Though I think this particular incident is the straw, the final straw that has broken the back of the camel. But every Kenyan in every part of this country must feel as Kenyan. We must be able to make sure there is equity spread out throughout this country. That Aden's son in Garissa and Balambala can get the same quality of education as my son in Nairobi or in Trans Nzoia. That Lorna can know that wherever she is, she'll get the same standard of healthcare as any other Kenyan. That is what all these countries that have unity have as a basic level. And then really let us just say enough is enough. Let us not have divisive politics, divisive talk,
but that is easier said than done, Sakaja, because I want to bring in Aden on this one, and let's talk about, for instance, the issue of the VAT.
Yes.
Okay, and when it was passed, everyone was in parliament. We had minority was there, the government side was there, and then after Kenyans start crying about this very high prices, it's hurting ordinary mwananchi, then we see court turning around and saying, we're going to bring in this law, we want to have it changed. Yet they were there at the beginning. And the question among Kenyans is, how can we then rally around these national important issues, like when we talk about the price of basic commodities, so we don't politicize the issue, because really that was politicization of an issue. So where do we see the end of that and actually have politics or our leadership looking and thinking about mwananchi from the very beginning, not when they think it will favor their politics to now sing a certain tune?
Yeah, right. Sophia, let me say politics, first of all, is not only limited to Kenya. Politics is everywhere in the world. Every other country in this world, including the big states, or the United States, goes through the election period. President Obama right now is in a situation whereby his party does not hold the majority in the Congress, for example, and the country is on. And there are times, and in many times, they come together, pull ranks when the country needs that unity. They come together and they carry on. Let me say that political views are healthy in their nature if positively utilized. Healthy because if only one side, or they say the government alone, is let to do things as it so wishes, then absolute power, they say, corrupts or something like that. And I think, first of all, I just want to say that, unfortunately, the reality of things are that politicians in Kenya tend to use the divisive nature of politics to their advantage. And this is what the young generations of us in politics, Honorable Sakaja and myself, are saying not to. We're saying we will not politicize issues of core interest to Kenyans and use that as an advantage. I think, as he rightfully said, I think it is a matter of time before, just like the typewriters, as he rightfully put, were overtaken naturally by events. It's probably going to be a matter of time before Kenyan politicians and Kenyans themselves mature and say, no, we listen to you, we hear what you're saying, and we accept you based on what you're putting, the views you're putting as a leader. So going forward, and I must say that, admittedly, it's been politics, the one thing that divides Kenya most. It's a reality. Because when you talk about our culture and ethnicity, look at the shows that you see, the Churchill show and all this. When he talks like our Ria from Garissa and or a Luya, we laugh about it. Yeah. We're happy about it. But that means that Kenyans love each other in terms of their diversity, in terms of ethnicity. But when it comes to politics, that's the one unfortunate thing that divides us, which is something that we need to move on, which is something that we need to move Kenya from. The very good question that you've asked about the VAT. I must say that there's quite a lot of misunderstanding around the VAT issue. I'm a member of the Parliamentary Budget Committee, and I must say that it was with very good intention that that particular bill was drafted. And across the divide, we were all thinking in the same direction of saying that we put the interest of Kenyans first. What we need to know is that Kenyans need to know one reality for a fact. Without me justifying any increase of either VAT, the reality of which is that actually in most of the commodities, none has been increased. It is just that some opportunistic traders along the line taking advantage of this whole thing and increasing prices. Yes, there might be increases in input, but compare Kenya to the rest of the countries. Uganda at 18% VAT, Tanzania at 20% VAT, Rwanda at similarly within that 18% VAT. We're actually the lowest in terms of VAT in the region. But it is the issue of how do we implement this along the line. Remember, it's a free economy. The government cannot go and control the price of bread or the price of sugar or this and that. I must say that Kenyans have cried out. We as politicians must listen to Kenyans. Sakaja and I need to go back to the drawing board and say that what in terms of law needs to be put in place to ensure that the common mwananchi does not suffer. If it is that 16%, remember, this 16% is what builds our roads, is what builds our hospitals, is what builds, is what puts that basic infrastructure in place for Kenyans to live well. So that VAT bill, we have taken up the views of Kenyans. We will relook at that law again. I think that is an opportunity which is coming our way now. And wherever that we need to correct to ensure that Kenyans' issues feel addressed, we will definitely address that. But in my conclusion, I want to say that I think the divisive nature of the Kenyan politics needs to be changed. That needs to change for us to embrace the spirit of oneness in full.
All right, let's go back a little bit to what happened at the Westgate. And yesterday I was talking to a counter-terrorism trainer. And one thing he said that definitely prior to this attack, there were signs, and many at that. Prior to any terrorist attack, there will be signs somewhere. And signs that mostly can be read by ordinary people. Okay, and now the question comes in, Lorna, of what happened to being my brother's keeper as well, because there must have been, we understand they were in the country for quite some time, so somebody would have noticed something fishy, read out something off but not reported it. Somebody would have turned a blind eye when we're talking about our immigration borders and all that. Somebody somewhere would have had the knowledge that perhaps, or the suspicion that perhaps this could go south, but we decided, let's close and now look at what kind of effects it has had on us. So what happened to that? I'll be my brother's keeper, that sense of nationhood, that I will not allow this bad person to come into my country. We saw that picture of the little boy saying, you bad man?
You're a bad man.
You're a bad man. And so for everybody to actually look at people who would have the intention to cause harm in a country as such, not because I'll get 200 shillings, 1,000 bob. What happened to being a brother's keeper?
I know we had this conversation on Twitter with someone, and someone said corruption is going to kill us, literally. And for me, it was going back to a couple of things and just looking at the media space. And this is the one thing I think as a Standard Group you have to get credit for. A couple of years ago, probably 2 or 3, John Allen, in one of the exclusive shows, did an expose where he went to Garissa, or part of, I'm not sure whether it's Garissa or Wajir, bought an AK-47 and delivered it to Central Police Station. They bought it, they drove, they came. It was a proper show. And I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness. He's like, we want to show you about the issue of arms. So getting arms into this country, one, has been a problem, has been a concern. This is not something that started yesterday. It started for a while. I think a month ago or 2 months ago, there was an article in the Standard about somebody, same thing, someone who was smuggled in from Somalia and was now working in Italy. Same thing. And how they paid $300, how they're called, there's a code name, they're called Mbuzi, how they went to the police checks, how she got an ID. So this lady has an ID, managed to get through. Along the way, they just paid. So this is not something that hasn't been there. 2, And that for me is now just from local people. But why would people do this? Who are these people letting people in? And it goes back to me and I put the question back to the politicians and say, at the beginning, one of the things that we saw towards the beginning of this year, before elections and towards the end of last year, was demonstrations, something we had not seen in Kenya for a long time. And I was part of that on the streets. I was part of the people with Boniface and going out and saying, we cannot have these perks. We need to, where does this money need to go to? Where are our priorities? We've talked so long about reforming our police, about treating them better, about paying them better. If I am earning 20,000 shillings, in fact, at that rate, it's probably 13 or 14. You've given me a weapon, you've put me at risk, I have nothing else that I need to care about, and someone else comes and offers me an extra 10,000. I am hungry. I need to take care of my family. I need to take care of this person. But the priorities of this has become totally skewed. That I think doctors, teachers, when you see doctors, teachers, and police wages being some of the lowest paid in the country, who are we expecting to take care of us? Civil service has had a rot in it that has been amazing. We've seen it embedded. We've talked about corruption. But part of it goes back to responsibility. When you begin to realize, why should I care when the top people, no one ever gets touched at the top, so it's kind of like the small people. So I have, the thing about responsibility comes from the fact that I know you will do the same for me. But we are seeing now an economic divide where we know at a certain level you can get away with murder, and at another level you're on your own. And that begins to show people that, why should I take a chance? Why shouldn't I take this money? Because for me, as much as you say it's little money, if I'm earning 10 and you're giving me 20, it is as much as me earning $1 million and you're bribing me with 20. The mechanics change. So in terms of that, I think there needs to be a serious conversation which should be driven by citizens, which is to ask, where are our priorities as a country? We spent the beginning of this year, and I know we spoke at least with these two gentlemen, about why is it that we've come back into parliament and MPs want their wages increased, and we're not even willing to start the work first and see. Doctors, teachers went on strike. We had that whole thing. Nurses threatened to go on strike. The police went on a go slow. So yes, there are signs, but people are like, why should I be working? I'm barely getting on. VAT came on, and on top of that, not even your little money, on top of that is being taxed. So you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And if they don't care, why should I? And that's the thing I'm saying about leadership. Somebody needs to say, the buck stops with me. The responsibility of this country is not in the hands of 400 people, it's in the hands of millions. And those millions need to feel that those people they've elected are actually taking care of them. And not of them in terms of, oh, you're my people, I've got your back. It is your child in school? As he said, can my child afford to get an education in Garissa? Can my child afford? Is a policeman saying, I'm going to stake my life because the welfare of my people, even my children are taken care of, even my people, because they have the same problems we do. So for me, I think that is really one of it. And then also in terms of security, and I know you picked up this earlier with Manjuri, but there's been not necessarily, and I can't say there's a lapse in security. And yes, every single attack that happens majorly across the world, there was a sign. Even 9/11, they said they had heard about it. They knew, but the thing about this outcome is how they execute them. So how prepared are you in terms of response is probably what you can manage, and not necessarily everything else. But for me, we were looking at it, and on Twitter, in one of those the Al-Shabaab accounts that have been coming down all the time, on the 19th of July, there was a whole thing that said there's going to be an attack, 50 plus dead, sustained media coverage. Something like Godana or someone says Nairobi, Somalia. It's a hashtag 3 months ago. So I go back to saying that was put out there. What was done? What was done to mitigate it? What was done to say over the next 6 months we're going to have physical police presence at specific places? An alert that says, we had these alerts before that says, people beware, so that people kind of think about it. So I think there's a couple of those things we need to look at. But if you ask me the root cause of this, one is corruption, but two, it's also because there's been a serious economic divide that's starting to be felt in this country.
Right, and you talk about corruption. Sakaja, let me bring you in. Corruption, of course, we've had this discussion about poor remuneration when it comes to our security forces, capacity for them. So what must be done to create that sufficient feeling of nationhood, even among them? There's a police officer at the border point, or as you know, because we have said there are people who notice it, there are people who turned a blind eye. So what do we do? Because as Lorna has said, these are normal human beings. They have needs just like you and I. And so if somebody comes here, I'm being given 1,000 shillings and this 5,000 which could help me out, I will take that. So there's this whole discussion about corruption, looking at remuneration, looking at capacity, looking at also these institutions and what are we doing to ensure they themselves at their levels are feeling Kenyan to the core.
Let me say this. First of all, it is true that the security forces can be remunerated better. Same goes to the immigration officers. But is it only poor people who are corrupt? Corruption is not about poverty. Corruption is about values. You see, and which is why we're saying we need to bring out a Kenyan identity and value. You have a family, Sophia. Lorna, you have a family. Aden, you have a family. There are certain things that you cannot do. And if you do, guys, the community will say, this is not how the Wanunas behave. This is not how the Irungus are supposed to deal.
Right.
Yeah? Same goes for you. Because you have a culture. You have a value system. Now, we go back to ask ourselves, are we as a country, a nation that is a family? Are we just 40 million people who found themselves between the same borders? Or is there a value system such that anybody can tell you that doing this is not Kenyan? This is not how we do. I cannot let somebody just cross the border and become a Kenyan because of money. Because that is not Kenyan. It is not Kenyan to take a bribe. Which is why we need to create that identity that supersedes short-term financial gain, that transcends ethnicity, that transcends individual gain, or just looking at myself as a person. And I realize I'm part of a bigger family that has certain values. That is why when you see somebody saying, I'm American, I've done this because I'm American, it's because they've created it. And let me tell you, this oneness, we're saying we are one, will not just go on, it won't just happen automatically. We will not fight corruption automatically. It has to be very deliberate to create that identity, that it is not Kenyan to behave like that, that it will be frowned upon, leave alone the fine that you get or the jail term that you will receive, but just being shunned by society. And in as much as government, and I know government will ensure that our border points have been checked, all of them, that there is, and I have a lot of confidence in the new director of immigration, because this is a problem that has happened over the years. I have a lot of confidence in Jane Wakenda, because she has been able to show, even in the past, in terms of her performance, that she's a no-nonsense person, and she believes in, if there's a problem, if there's a rot, deal with it, get them out. But ultimately, where is the social fabric? Do you know your neighbors? Who lives next to you? What do they do? Where do they come from? The kids your children play with, many of us don't even know our neighbors. I was staying at an apartment block somewhere, and I think the first time I actually said hi to my neighbor is when I had a puncture and I didn't have a jack. I needed a jack to, and why do we get to know each other in times of problems or adversity, or when we need help? Let us begin the culture of good neighborliness. In the past, a number of years ago, Kenyans had that culture of neighborliness, where you'd go borrow salt, you'd go borrow sugar, when you run out, you'd go borrow an egg, whatnot. But you see, because of the economy probably, we became competitive to a fault, that you really don't care about who's staying next to you. We became a very closed society. We must address that issue of neighborliness, because the person who lives next to you, no matter their tribe, no matter where they come from, is more important than your tribesmate who is in the village. Because that is your first line of defense, that is your security. Those are the people who will influence how your children will become, and the values. So I think, in as much as there is what government must do, and I am confident government will do, with respect to security, with respect to our immigration, with respect to our borders, there is what we Kenyans must also do. We must be aware, we must be alert, and let us care for each other. I think the fact that Kenyans care for one another came out clearly, that inherently we do. But I mean,
we let other things
you get into a matatu, you don't even say hi to the person next to you. You're just focused, you're on Twitter, you're on your phone, you're with the headphones on. You really don't care about who's sitting next to you. Let's get to know each other. And let us start that, I think, is it 10 houses forming one group all over the country, people getting to know each other and having community policing, because that social fabric is what will create those values that we're talking about being Kenyan.
And I like that you bring that out because it's very important. It's all about moral value, our core values, creating that culture and a bigger identity which must be worked on. But Aden, our youth and the high rate of unemployment, as we're looking at creating that those strong values, they become very susceptible to radicalization, as terrorism now becomes then the discussion back front and center at this point. What must be done to make sure that we do not see more and more of our youth, getting caught up in these terrorist activities?
I think that's a very important point you bring out. It is very true to say that, unfortunately, the situation of our youth in terms of lack of employment has been cited many times as the root cause of them being attracted to take money and go and do harm to other Kenyans. The obvious now is that, and I think I'm happy that these issues are now being seen and given a lot more priority in terms of saying that we need to address the youth issues in terms of ensuring that we create employment for them, which has been said many times, but I think the spirit of nurturing entrepreneurship, like the youth fund that is coming now, is something that I'm personally very keen to see how it is going to work, and we must make it a success, because it is probably what is going to end this thing of the very many kind of youth who are in the villages all across our towns unemployed. It is very dangerous lot if we don't manage them well. At the same time, we need also to directly target them with the information in the nature of showing them the true spirit of patriotism. Going to reach out to them. We should not let them feel isolated out there. We need to reach out to them. And what we have seen is that, and I want to say this point, is that I want Kenyans to be very careful not to be divided and seeing each other and saying that maybe it is this community that is the terrorists, maybe it is this religion, maybe it is this. This is one of the objectives that the people who attacked Westgate wanted to achieve in Kenya.
Exactly.
In my view, this attack was an attack on our economy, on our liberty, and an attack to divide Kenya. So we must not accept this. That's why I said in Parliament the other day, let's go back to our shopping malls. Let's build that confidence and go back and have that nice coffee, that nice shopping that we used to do in our malls. If we stop doing that, our economy suffers. So, and hence, now the terrorists will achieve what they wanted to achieve. That is, they win. The divisive nature of saying that, when those guys look like this, they spoke the language that Aden speaks, they were this, they were that. I want us to be very, very careful, because these terrorists now, as we all know, are employing Kenyans of all types. These unemployed youth, they are reaching them to all whatever, going to indoctrinate them with certain things. There is no religion that can support anybody to kill a child. There is no religion that can support anybody to go into innocent people who are enjoying their lives and shooting them as spread. Certainly, I know for sure that Islam and Christianity and any other religion that I know of don't encourage this. So we must not be divided along that. And I call upon our youth to say to them that the existence of our country is far better than going for some small amount of money. And I must say, maybe just to end that point, is that it is very honorable to sleep hungry than to harm our country. I think that's the view that I would want to say. The oneness of Kenyan, that if a Kenyan were to ask me, what is the state that we should all be in terms of mind and feel at any one time, to say that we are true Kenyans? There's this feeling that I feel, and I believe every other Kenyan feels, whenever I hear or see the national anthem being sung. There's an element of pride, emotion sometimes. You feel, especially depending on where you are, especially if you're out there, out of Kenya, and the national anthem is played. Even if we are here, and the national anthem is played, that state of moment we are in, that is the oneness of Kenyan that we want to achieve. That is the state of mind We want every Kenyan to be in at any one time, so that when I'm shaking my hand to my brother on the other side of the divide of, be it politics or whatever, I want my emotions and my feeling to be the state of singing our national anthem.
Yes.
If we achieve that, we will achieve the oneness of Kenya that we want.
And as Mheshimiwa has alluded, Lorna, the danger of profiling is real.
Yes.
Coming from this attack, depending on what we hear that people were being forced to repeat, to say, and we must guard against that, because then we cannot be looking at each other as us against them, and these are the people you know who do these things, right?
I think I agree on that, and because for me, this is the second attack that I guess has really affected me. In 1998, when I worked for KTN, I was actually one of the first people at the site of the US bombings and spent about 5 days there. And remember that the Islamic community at that time, the Ismailis, were probably the first people on site to provide food. Right. Same thing. They provided food, drinks, everything. They fed the journalists, the people who were there for the entire 4 or 5 days that it took to clear that rubble and to get everybody and to get most of the bodies out. And I think what has happened, and I know Sakaja alluded to this when he talked about the fact that about 100 Kenyans have died, and the Daily Nation yesterday had a chronology of events of the various attacks we've had. And what happened, if you remember the beginning of this year, especially the attacks in Isli, we had retaliation attacks of people attacking mosques, of people attacking churches, and then you start beginning to hear that sentiment of the Somalis must go home or this, and it's a painful thing, because then at some point you're like, these are the people doing it, but it's not what Aden has said. It's not about religion. Anyone who does this in the name of religion is not. And for me, one of the most profoundly powerful things that this weekend has taught me was there was no retaliation on any front, that there was no isolated attack somewhere or here or saying. I know there was a couple of hateful things said on social media, and you're like, just everyone was caught up in this. No one was said. And yes, there are those people who are told, if you can recite this, go. But on the flip side, there's somebody who was saved because they were told, here, this is what to say this. If they come, say this, and they got saved. So in that space, you had people actually step up. And one of the I know one of my colleagues said on Twitter and said, now that some of the attackers I said or were said to have been Caucasian, will we receive the same profiling that the others do? And there goes a question. Then someone was like, this is actually a real question. But to also realize that on the flip side of it, by nature, profiling will always happen. It will happen whether you are, and it goes back to what are the things you are known for, what are the things that people begin to reflect on you. So yes, you're still also hearing negative stories of a lady who's like, her husband is a suspect because his last name was Islam, a Muslim name. So he's automatically a suspect. And then there are those who are not. So I think in terms of that, it's got to be a twofold approach. One where the story and the issue he has raised continues to be done. We need to have, I like that the Muslim leaders, and for me it always goes back to what the leadership does, have stood up and said, this is not us, this is not how we do this. They have come up, even physical support to give blood and to show that we are together in this, that our people have also died, and we've seen this happen. And that begins to let people know that it's not them against us. We all need to figure out it's us against some other people. So I think in terms of that, it also then we need to see those images more. We need to hear these conversations more. They need to be brought into our living rooms, into our homes. They need to be discussed at political levels so that we start seeing that unity at that level.
All right, and Sakaja, I'll come to you. We had the president speak, and he spoke very powerfully, strongly, and firmly, and inspired a sense of nationhood among all Kenyans, all who listened to him. But I'll take you back. Remember, during the breakfast with the media owners, and one of the questions he was asked was, what does he do in a country that the election left us quite divided, almost right half down the middle? And he was asked, how does he make everybody feel like he is their president? Because going forward, the role of who some would call the unifier in chief, So as much as we're talking about our role at our individual capacity, the role of the president, what does he need to do to firm this up? Because we're talking about it, yes, we all have a role at our individual capacities, but he is that unifying chief. When we watched him the last few days giving those statements and speaking about what Kenya is and what we must remain as a Kenyan people, were powerful words, and we felt him, we were with him. How does he keep this going? And we'll go to the role and what the minority and CORD leader has to do as well, but the president.
I like that description of unifier in chief, not just commander in chief, but unifier in chief. And I must say that the president has come out in his true form, because that's who he really is as an individual. His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta is a unifier. He believes in this country. He has always believed in the promise of Kenya. And indeed, there is a lot of responsibility that is on him to keep bringing Kenyans together. After the election, I know people have said we were divided, but I think we were different. We were not divided. Some people might not have been happy with the result. Some were elated with the result, but we were still Kenyans. Because if we were divided, at Kencom I'd have seen a CORD line and a Jubilee line. To donated blood, there was none. It was just a Kenyan line. We're still Kenyans, we've accepted, and we have a leadership. And I think the way this government is operating and the way it's going to continue to operate, that no part of this country will be discriminated against because of how they voted. You have seen us in the coast just a few weeks ago dealing with the land issue. That is not one of the areas where we got a lot of votes from. I know there are a lot of initiatives that are going to be happening in other areas where we may not have received votes, because now that the president got elected and inaugurated, he's the president of the entire country. And I think it was a really good move to rally all the leaders together as well, and to issue a statement united on this issue. We saw the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga with him, the former Deputy Prime Minister Musalia Mudavadi together with him. And I think that actually is the way to go, because and as the president keeps saying, politics is not enmity. It is just a competition of ideas, and it should be a competition of ideas. And again, I come back to the media. For if actually we decide that for the next 2-3 years we will just let business and work go on, let us not give politics that much of coverage. Let us show. I mean, if I'm a politician and I speak just empty politics that's divisive, don't cover me, don't show me. But if I speak something that is developmental, that is inspiring, that is motivating young people, that is motivating this country, then give me the airtime. Because how else do we interact with how our leaders speak or divide us or unite us? It is through the television, it is through radios, it is through the newspapers. So I think the government and His Excellency the President have a huge task to bring this country together and to secure it. And I must tell you that they are up to this task. We are up to this task, and it will be done.
And finally, as we wind up in your last sentiments, before I come to the rest, we've been seeing this conflicting information the last couple of days, which is, as much as we were saying, yes, we appreciate the roles that have been played and what everybody has done, but the conflict of information coming from the government agencies not helping with the speculation, with some quarters saying, okay, this has been said, the same people contradicting each other. What do you have to say quickly about that? I have to ask you that before.
Let me say this. There is a delicate balance between giving information as much as you'd want to, while still in the middle of an operation. And I think we've been able to see that struggle when we've seen some of our leaders speaking to this issue. I understand and I feel that Kenyans want to know everything, but I think we should really give them time to finish addressing this issue.
I don't think Kenyans want to know everything. Kenyans just want the consistency, at least in information. The problem here is the contradicting the information you get from the same source. They say this, then this. Because we understand you cannot know everything. This is security stuff. You cannot be told everything, but at least the same script.
I think in certain instances, maybe some quarters were too quick to give information or answered too many questions, and in the process were not as accurate as they should have been, and which is really the trick that you need to learn when you're in certain positions, that you don't have to speak all the time, but speak when you have all the information. And I think some certain quarters really were too eager to give information
when
until and when the facts came out, it was different.
Okay.
And then and that really rarely inspires. It does not inspire much confidence.
Right.
But I think also it was a learning process for some of this.
For everybody. Aiden, as you wind up as well, the role of the CORD leader, because he got quite a number of votes in the election, quite a number of people still look at him as that national leader, and he is a national leader. His role in ensuring that our unity continues.
Let me first of all say that the CORD leader, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, is very, very much and deeply concerned about the issues that have happened, like every other Kenyan. And I must say that I echo what Honorable Sakaja said, that I think the President showed an exemplary leadership in terms of pulling together all the political divide, leadership from across the political divide, and bringing them together into a common platform on this particular issue. What the opposition, or if I may use the word, will do in this particular environment is to ensure that it helps this process in order for Kenyans to get good information, as we've just asked here, right information, all this. But I must say that we in the opposition will ask the very candid questions which people in the government will have to answer. This is the truth of the matter. We will ask of,
and it's necessary,
and it's very necessary. We will ask of the true who slept on his job, who's responsible for this, who did, because we are seeing you're just doing a media review earlier, and you're seeing somebody saying that we gave the right intelligence. An honorable senator says that I availed intelligence to the intelligence agency. Who didn't do his work? Who could have acted at certain point to have avoided what has happened in Westgate to have happened? Lorna rightfully said, the signs were all over. So the opposition is going to ask very candid questions. But what we want to say is that there are things that are happening as we manage this process, as you are rightfully asking this. The information bit has rightfully been discussed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. There's been quite a lot of resource that has been put together in terms of money. How is that money going to be managed? In whose custody is the 60-70 million that we have collected, for example? How is it being managed? These are questions that the ordinary Kenyan will start asking now. And as the opposition, as the voice of what the common Mwananchi will say, we will be asking these very candid questions. And but I must say that it is all going to be done with the right intention to ensure that what happened in Westgate does not happen again.
All right. Finally, Lorna,
let me just give a reassurance.
Yes.
Because I know what the president feels about this. Where there will be evidence of incompetence, somebody who slept on the job, he will not hesitate to let heads roll. Because it is not about political expediency, it is not about friendship or whatnot, it's about delivery and the safety of Kenyans. And as Jubilee, we will never compromise the safety and security of Kenyan people.
Excellent. Finally, Lorna, as we wind up this discussion, Kenya being one, I want you to touch on the social media and it being a double-edged sword in terms of it could be used for good, as we saw with most Kenyans just coming together, those messages of goodwill, of hope, and passing information across, but also could be used to bring hatred and divide us even further. So the place of social media, which has become very popular, we've seen all the government agencies were on there, they're all tweeting and posting on Facebook. How must that be used to enhance our unity?
I think first and foremost for me, the biggest challenge for any government right now across the world, it's not going to be a unique Kenyan problem, is how to manage social media in connection to incidences like this that happen. And I was saying, I was at some point, one of the official government handles tweeted something and I was like, I've dismissed you. I've dismissed you when you start talking about we're here to kill people, not to serve them pastries. The person handling that account should know that that is not at any point what you should be saying in terms of a crisis. Because social media is a space where there's anonymity, where there's anyone who has an opinion can share it, good, bad, evil, whatever it is, they can share it. And so for me, the people, first and foremost from a government point, and we saw this, when Osama bin Laden was killed, this was an operation that was so top secret that it was less than 10 people who knew that it was happening. But the news was broken on Twitter once it happened. By the time the president of the United States, and let's go now to that level, came to give his statement, it was 2 hours, almost an hour and a half after the story had broken. It was probably 2-3 a.m. in the morning. There were already people outside the White House. That is probably the most top secret operation ever taken. Now, Westgate, you had people with phones, you had people SMSing, you had people taking pictures, and then you have people sending in conflicting information, competing with what is being said on the ground.
Right.
As a government, you cannot compete. So for me, part of the biggest glaring things that we observed on social media was that in terms of understanding this new digital age, how to handle information, there's still a lot of old school thinking. This is not radio where you could call someone and all of you say the combined thing.
Yeah.
So you have 4 officials, Kenya Defense Forces, the Kenya Police, the Interior Ministry, saying different things. You have the media who are on the ground with contacts who are like, wait a minute, this is what we're hearing. You have international media who have even more contacts saying, this is what is happening. And then you have a blogger who has pictures saying, actually, this is what is happening, who has actual footage. So there's going to be a huge challenge. And I think communication, crisis communication especially, is not something you get just by virtue of the fact that you have gone to school and studied something. Okay. You've got to understand what that is done in the context of social media. Secondly, as you said, it's rightfully divisive and positive. And for me, one of the things that you see is that there's people who have chosen that platform to do something with it. And there are people who come on there to do nothing positive with it. And the challenge is always going to be, how do we have more positive people than negative? It's what we've all said. There's a mixture of everyone. So you can't say we're going to shut out the negativity. The thing for me is manage your communication. Official government, and I even had to check whether are they actually official government social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, need to always have the same official message. They cannot be conflicting. They should not compete. Even if we say this is happening and that is happening, the official line should consistently be official, not to show any contradicting information. That way you do not expose yourselves. And because I think what happened is, at some point we felt the government was taking us for a ride, because we are not stupid, and because suddenly they no longer have an upper hand. The information flow is no longer hierarchical. Now it is across the board. So anyone with a camera, a phone, this or this, anyone who can talk to someone can dish it out. So in that is going to be a whole learning curve in beginning to understand how to manage that process, who to pull in. Sometimes maybe what you need to do is figure out who is on your side that you can get to share something that you once said, who has enough influence and clout without necessarily it coming from you, so that you start also sharing your information. But it cannot be, because at some point the We Are One hashtag has changed to We Are Wondering. Because of all the different communication that people have seen online.
Our time is up, Sakaja. Our time is up. That comment in 5 seconds.
Very quickly, you're a communications consultant. Where do we draw the line between just freedom of expression and everybody telling us what is happening and strategic communication? Because if everybody is on social media running for a scoop, they want to show, these are the police, they're now entering, they're now going through this side. I mean, that jeopardizes
you've been very critical. You've been very critical about you
online.
Said it. No, you said it. Everyone else is going to give their 2 cents opinion. As a government, you have to be strategic. You cannot compete with them. Even if they're saying people are running in, that's fine. You then need to figure out, if we're not able, the official government position cannot be contradictory, because you know that you're not going to come out of that. But you're also better off getting maybe somebody else to fight your battles, but not yourself to put yourself out there, because then you're still the government position. Then we'll come back. If an official Twitter handle can tell me we are here to deal with these people, not feed them pastries, that is not what I expect to hear from a government official.
I agree with you, and I think that is why they've been brought now under the PSCU, all of them together.
There needs to be a central command of that communication.
I agree.
Lorna Irungu, communication consultant, Kenya member, also Abdulkadir Aden, member of parliament, Balambala. and nominated Member of Parliament Sakaja Johnson. Thank you all for being with us this
Thank you,
evening.
Sophia.
A very riveting discussion, one that must continue at home, at school, in church, at the government level. What will be done to ensure our unity goes beyond this tragedy, and also just remembering that it's our responsibility, individual level, at your own capacity. You have a role to play. As we ask questions, as we want people to be accountable for certain things, it's also up to me and you. We are Kenyans. We must remain one for our good. Thank you for watching. Stay with us. Morning Express continues in a short while.